All right, welcome to Best of the West. I am pinch hitting for Kevin Bohannon. Trust me, he'll be back next week. I'm just doing a little favor right now alongside Jake Thomas. Welcome to Best of the West, where we talk about the preeminent division of the college football. And, well, there might be an argument next year, but this year it's the
Right.
preeminent division. And how you doing, Jake?
Doing good, man. Glad to be back again. And since me and Kevin talked last, there's a lot of news that has come out. So I'm anxious to get into it and talk about it.
Yeah, last time y'all talked was last year, right?
Yeah, it seems like good night.
Yeah. Well, if you've been living under a rock or you have been avoiding our page and everything that's going on, Texas and OU is applying for membership into the SEC and coming in. That is going to set amongst a chain reaction inside the SEC as far as where teams are going to end up, and outside the SEC as far as further expansion. Although we do get to sit back, kick our legs up, and watch expansion and all this craziness happen, knowing we're done.
Absolutely. And my biggest question is this the start of the super conferences, that they've been talking about for a few years? Maybe you stop at Texas and Oklahoma, but there's also that rumor that Ohio State, Michigan, Florida State, Clemson all have reached out to join the SEC in the future as well. So we'll see, but it may be the start of the future conferences, the super conferences.
Yeah, nobody knows where this is going to end up. There's always basically the law of unintended consequences when something like this happens. You don't know what's going to happen two steps down the line.
Right.
So a super conference could develop. You could see a merger of Big 12 teams and the Pac 12. You could see a merger of Pac 12 teams and the Big 10.
Yeah.
Notre Dame joining a conference. I mean, there's a ton of options that are on the table.
Yeah, and I've been a huge component of Notre Dame joining a conference just for the fact, that it seemed like in the FBS Independence, they got a cakewalk every season, and they're pretty much in the playoff hunt every year just for that reason. They may play one or two tough games. Now, last year they played, the ACC
ACC.
conference, and so I think expansion wise for them, it would be huge for them to get in a conference. But back home, I'm excited about it because of revenue wise. I mean, Texas and Oklahoma own money pits, for both of them coming in, so it's going to be huge for the conference.
Yeah, and I just don't know, honestly, just thinking about it, where the SEC goes from here.
Hmm.
Are there any other teams out there that would add to the bottom line, or have we hit the point where the SEC kind of sits where it is because of all the brands and you just rake in all the money? I'm not 100% sure at this point.
That's a good point. Do where do you go from here? That's a very good
Mm.
question, and it's going to be interesting to see what Greg Sankey does. In a few years' time, if somebody like if it wasn't just a rumor that Clemson, Ohio State, them guys reached out, we'll see in the future what holds to that.
Yeah, I don't put too much stock in that rumor at this
I
point.
know.
I think it's just a side effect of everybody trying to pile on the Oklahoma and Texas thing and the
Hmm.
uncertainty. And there's all sorts of crazy theories that are out there. So, but I mean, it's nutty enough. If something comes up. There's just no real smoke there. When you look for second, third, fourth sources to pick it up, there's only one person talking about it,
Right.
and it's been like 3 days at this point.
Absolutely, but there's been a lot, that happened with the Texas Oklahoma, so that's pretty much a definite now. And
Hmm.
I'm just excited. It, I was kind of against it at first because Texas with the Longhorn Network, they raked in like 95% of the conference money, and they were still going 6-6, 7-5. They was never winning their conference, but still, coming in the SEC, you're going to get the players, you're going to get the talent, and you're going to get the name recognition now because it's the SEC, baby.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and Alabama and Auburn is probably going to move to the east, and that's going to make
Hmm.
way for Texas and Oklahoma and Missouri to come back west. So
Hmm.
everything geographically kind of lines up the way it's supposed to. Natural rivals comes back. The only game that I think we will lose in this scenario is LSU and Alabama.
Probably so, and
Mm.
that's gonna hurt. I think just because here the past couple of years it has become a big rivalry because LSU did beat Alabama and went on to win the national championship that a few years ago. So I know they lost like 8 in a row before they won, but still that pretty much is their homecoming. And I've always said everybody, is a homecoming game to Alabama because they want to beat Alabama. So
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna get everybody's best shot. And I just hate it for LSU if that's the case. Because I know they always circle that game in the year.
Yeah, it should be interesting, but that looks like it's the only game. The
Hmm.
trade off for that is you get Texas Oklahoma, Texas Arkansas, Texas LSU,
Yeah,
Texas A&M, Oklahoma LSU. I mean, all these marquee games coming into the West for the cost of one game. And you
right.
look at like Auburn and Florida, that rivalry gets to be renewed. The Auburn and
Yes.
Tennessee rivalry gets to get started back up.
Hmm.
And those things were basically casualties of the permanent Eastern Division opponent being Georgia.
Right.
And so the other two were able to fell by the wayside. I mean, that's like 30 years of to get back. And if the LSU and Alabama game dies, maybe Ole Miss can get that game back on October 31st.
That's a very good point.
Um,
Yeah, and I was going to say, you was talking about marquee matchups. Man, I can't. I would love to see, in the future, Lane and Steve Sarkisian going at it. I mean, that's going to be great to see. So,
yeah.
I'm
So,
I'm I'm sure y'all are excited about that as well.
yeah, and all this realignment and everything, not many people are going to notice, but there are going to be really no places for coaches once they get in the SEC to move up.
Right.
Yeah,
Hmm.
it's like even Vanderbilt will be a destination job with the amount of money they have.
Oh, absolutely. And
Mm,
they're already raking money, and
mm.
so yeah, it's a very interesting. And it's going to get wild here in the next couple of years for sure, and I'm glad to see it.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. The game that I'm looking forward to, I was looking forward to Kevin before he got ill tonight, coming
Hmm.
on to talk about it. The Arkansas Texas game.
Yes.
Because that is a low level rivalry that is a casualty of them leaving the Southwest Conference. That yearly coming back together and that ability to build it back up, it's going to give them a game that they haven't had since they joined the SEC. And
Hmm.
Arkansas is probably the big winner of all of this expansion.
Absolutely,
Mm-hmm.
without a doubt. And I can't, I'm with you. I can't wait to see that game. I think they renew it this year, just
Mm-hmm.
for the one game. But I mean, with the possibility of coming back, and at this point, if we want to look into the future, I think Arkansas has a leg up right now on Texas.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a chance. I mean, you're talking about a
Hmm.
fan base that does horns down since they're
Hmm.
the age of 5, and they don't even play regularly anymore.
I
I
know.
mean, that's
Yeah.
how deep seated that rivalry is. I mean, the
Hmm.
great game, I think 1969, 1 and 2, Arkansas and Texas A&M. I think they played in Little Rock or Fayetteville. And maybe Texas ended up winning the game. Arkansas ended up going to the Sugar Bowl. But it ended up being like a 12-10 game or some ludicrously low scoring game if you saw it today.
Hmm.
But it was one. It was the equivalent of that Halloween game of the Ole Miss LSU rivalry.
Hmm. I was going to get your thoughts. I was going to get Kevin's tonight, Stephen, but I'm going to get yours. How do you feel about A&M? You think they're kind of upset with all this because it seemed like to me that they got away from the Big 12 to get away from Texas, and because of the money hungry, the money not being distributed evenly.
Well, Texas A&M. This is the way that I consider it, in my opinion. Texas A&M is a little bit like a battered woman, and she that had to fight and fight and fight to
Hmm.
get out. So everything was about me. But the SEC is about we.
Right.
We put that me aside. So Texas A&M had to get over that me, and it was a process, as we saw over the last week, to get there.
Oh
But they're
yeah.
going they're going to vote for Texas and Oklahoma to come into the conference and really establish themselves as a part of the SEC culture. Now, are there going to be hard feelings? Probably they didn't get their way,
Right.
but in the end, they're going to see that we're willing to do this for the best of the group. And we're going to do the same thing when Texas and Oklahoma comes in. They're not going to come in and bully this the way that they always have. This is the first time Texas has ever had a conference office that wasn't in Dallas, Texas.
That's a good point.
They're not going to earn Birmingham, Alabama. Alabama won't allow that to happen. Georgia won't
Right.
allow that to happen. Heck, LSU might meet them at the border.
That's
So
right.
I'm not totally worried about what's happening. I think Texas A&M, once they see the culture and kind of buy into the culture of the SEC, it'll take hold and actually work. But 10 years ago, it was all about me, and it goes back
Right.
before that, like 2006 or 2007. The third tier rights got separated from the Big 12 contract, and that was voted because of Texas A&M, Nebraska, Oklahoma, and Texas. Texas was the one that was able to monetize it, and that
Right.
caused the whole thing to break up. So they're going to be upset, but this is a little bit of being upset on their own doing. They could have had a network way back when. They could have done whatever they needed to do to build a strong conference with strong blue blood teams, but the me took over instead of the we.
Yeah, I agree with that. I know early on, like you said, there was talk of them like we're going to vote against it, going to vote against it. In Missouri, it's kind of the same way, but the last I saw, it was pretty much a 14-0
Mm-hmm.
decision so to let them come in. So I'm glad that, like you said, they have embraced it per
Mm-hmm.
se, because I mean, this is just going to do wonders for the conference. The SEC already gets the best athletes because you have your best athletes come out of Florida, Louisiana, Alabama, places like that. Now you're adding Texas to it, and there's athletes in Texas as well. So recruiting, especially on that end, is going to be really fun because now you're going to have you're going to have Texas, Oklahoma, Alabama, Ole Misses, LSU. Everybody's going to go after the same guy because it's the SEC.
80% of the blue chips in Texas will probably end up in the SEC after this is over.
Yes.
But I'm looking forward to, you know, Ole Miss already recruited Texas. You're
Right.
already after those same guys. They already recruited well. Oklahoma was a top 5 recruiter. That's not going to change just because they changed their, mailing address.
Hmm.
But the thing that I'm looking for is like the other sports, like an Alabama Oklahoma softball series,
Oh man. Yeah.
Mississippi State and Texas baseball series,
Yes.
LSU and Texas baseball series,
Hmm.
Kentucky going to Austin to play them in basketball. They just
Yes.
hired Chris Beard over there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is a big category inventory thing for the SEC network. I think they're going to roll the Longhorn network and become a branch to where the one in Charlotte is basically the SEC East network, the one in Austin is the SEC West network, and there's an overarching streaming service over the top.
That's a very good point. I never thought about that, but
Mm.
I was wondering what was going to happen to the Longhorn Network. But if they just merge them together, like you said, you have an SEC East and SEC West, and there you go.
Yeah, you do 2 shows a week, division specific. You do the Feinbaum show and SEC Now. Let them cross over and have different places to put the games. You don't need to use SEC Plus anymore because you can put it over there. You can put it on SEC East Network.
Absolutely, man. Yeah. Overall, like you said, the other sports is really going to be interesting too.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of worried about that Alabama Oklahoma softball series because,
Yeah.
man, that Oklahoma team is always stacked.
Yeah, it's crazy. And they also, the gym dogs are going to have to face
Hmm.
their gymnastics program. And
Yep.
there's a lot of smaller Olympic type sports that these guys are really going to affect because Texas is the winner of the Directors Trophy this year.
Wow. They don't know
For
that.
athletics all over all of their athletic department won the Directors Cup this year. So that's coming to the SEC.
That's amazing. I didn't know that stat.
Mhm.
Huh.
Yeah, it's the first time in like 30 years that Stanford hadn't won it.
Oh, wow.
Mhm.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's something else. All right, so let's we've done half the show on expansion. Let's move on to SEC
Yeah.
West defenses. This is a thought that makes me shiver a little bit. I'm a little bit wary of the defenses because we don't really do it in Oxford. But I'm looking forward to the improvement. My whole thing is imagine Ole Miss with a number 60th nationally ranked defense.
Y'all would be locked down, dude. That would
Mm-hmm.
be amazing. Yeah, that's a
Mm-hmm.
10-win team, I think.
Yeah,
Hmm.
potentially it could happen.
Hmm.
The pieces are in place for that to happen. Alabama defensively, I'm really looking forward to seeing what they do
Hmm.
after how they replace Surtain.
Hmm.
They're always going to be good up front. That's what they are.
Right.
But I'm interested to see what Pete Golding and that defense can do because Nick Saban has made the transition that Kirby Smart hasn't. Nick Saban's okay with winning a 27-17 game. Kirby
Right.
Smart wants a 17-3 win.
Right. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and we have talked about it on our show that defenses now you're not going to have like back in the 2000s, early 2000s where like you said it was a 17-3 win.
Mm-hmm.
That this day and age in offense is not going to happen because any offense can put up 40 on you, especially in the SEC. I mean, the way the talent spread is right now, but talking about Alabama's defense, I think they're going to be okay. I think we're going to have to rely on the defense early on because it's going to take a while for the offense to get going. I say about 3 to 4 games for the offensively to get started, but defensively, I mean, when you got guys like Will Anderson, who's an absolute stud on the end. You talked about losing Surtain. The one biggest issue that I'm looking into or I'm watching this fall camp and the start of the season, who's going to be the second corner this year? Because you have guys there, but most of them is inexperienced. So that right there is the biggest weakness to me on Alabama's defense.
Yeah, and an interesting thing with Alabama's defense as well.
Hmm.
This you may not have noticed this or whatever, but the nickel position in the Alabama defense has always traditionally been reserved for the new up and comer, the guy that when he's a sophomore and a junior is going to be a lockdown outside guy.
Hmm.
So Ole Miss attacked the middle of the field. They
That's
went
right.
after those linebackers and all that with Elijah Moore. And it makes me wonder if one of the lockdown guys doesn't need to learn how to play the inside and go ahead and put the on the outside the younger guy.
That's a very good point because usually the way Alabama's defense plays, usually the middle of the field is wide open. You just got to see it as a
Mm-hmm.
quarterback, and I think Corral did an amazing job that night.
Mm-hmm.
Because he saw it and he exploited it many, 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 many times, and you saw Saban just
Mm-hmm.
hot during
Yeah.
that game, and I was hot because my blood pressure is probably 380 over 300 in that game. but yeah, you have advantages in the middle of the field against Alabama's defense, especially if they don't switch
Mm-hmm.
before the play gets going.
Yeah, because
Mhm.
there's a little bit, whenever people try and figure out Saban and Alabama's defense, there's a little bit of matchup zone and
Right.
handoffs that happen back there, even when they're playing man. And it confuses people. It forces coverage to be tighter at times, and hopefully your defensive line can get home. But if there's a mistake because, there might be younger guys on the field or the inside guys are becoming the weapons, it's
Hmm.
going to have some separation. There's going to be plays to be made.
Absolutely. And another big thing that I was upset about Alabama's defense the last couple of years, especially, was when they would get the play call from the sideline. The offense will get to the line, they'll do an audible. Well, we're over looking at the sideline. Well, then they snap the ball, and we still ain't got our play. So it's just disarray in the back, in the secondary, especially. So I think we did a little bit better job of that last year. So I'm hoping they can get the calls in quicker than what they have in the past.
Yeah, especially with the tempo. That people are going to watch
Hmm.
that Ole Miss film and try and
Yes.
replicate it. Matt Corral is probably not going to be playing quarterback for that team, but they're going to try and
Hmm.
replicate it. But if Alabama were to run into Oklahoma in the playoff, that is a
Yes.
team that could replicate that.
Yes. Absolutely.
You saw that a little bit when Kyler Murray, Alabama beat Kyler Murray
Hmm.
in the playoff. But in the second half, they just started working the middle of the field, and you could see it developing, and to where they almost just ran out of time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
And they would have had another half to go. It probably would have been a different ball game.
Mm. Yeah, that game, Alabama jumped out so quickly. They
Right.
couldn't catch back up.
Hmm.
But yeah, one of my favorite quarterbacks of all time to watch, period. And I love living down here in Central Florida now, is because I have the ability to watch it, is Tua. I
Yes.
just, just fantastic. If he can stay healthy, I just like watching him play football. There's just something about him.
Yeah, Tua was a very special player, and injuries just hindered him. And I'm not sure exactly what happened that year. Was in the championship against Clemson, but we just got absolutely smacked. But I just hate that he never got a chance to play again in a national championship game because he was a special player. He's kind of like a once in a generational top talent.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and after he completed that pass to beat Georgia in overtime on 4th and 23 or whatever, yeah, his
Yeah,
luck was up for the rest of his college career.
I know it because it seemed like it went down after that.
Now, I have a question for you.
Okay.
We'll go up to Arkansas's defense and Barry Odom, and they do a lot of that drop eight stuff, and they're extremely physical, and it's just kind of the style that he likes to play. Sometimes three safeties back deep. What do you make of that defense? Is that the future, or is that just a hiccup on the way to advance?
Hmm. I don't think it's the future, um, but maybe that fits Barry Odom's style. And I mean, their defense wasn't too bad last year. Offense, I think it's up and coming, but I don't. I think they're going to be like a middle of the road type defense. They're probably going to be behind Ole Miss category wise,
Hmm.
this year. But that is an interesting point because three safeties, but you're losing either a linebacker or interior guy who can rush the quarterback. So
Yeah,
you know,
it's always the interior guy because they play
right,
the three man. But instead
hmm
of putting that extra defender in the box like they used
hmm
to,
right,
they cloud it three deep, and you start out, keep everything in front of you. It's kind of interesting. It's obviously a reaction to the offensive game right now.
right.
Um, but like I said, it's interesting. I do like the way that they play extremely physical. Oh
They
my
do.
goodness.
They do. They are a very tough team, and I said it last week. I really love that hire of Sam Pittman for them. Because that was a perfect fit for them because he's kind of like an old bulldog nose type coach. He don't take no crap from anyone. It's his way. And if you don't like that, and get out. So I think they hit a home run there with that hire. But yeah, it's Alabama, and other SEC teams can exploit that though, especially when they got a good running game. So it's kind of like a balancing act, especially in the SEC. You stop the run games. In Alabama's case, you stop the run game. Well, heck, our passing game will beat you. If you stop the passing game, a running back can beat you. So it's just a balancing act
Mhm.
on any defense because you know SEC offenses have gotten the tempo. There's more tempo and there's more no huddle than I've ever seen in college football right now.
Yeah, and like Ole Miss went up to Fayetteville, and Matt Corral just got in trouble because they refused to run the ball in the first half, and,
Hmm.
and it kind of snowballed on him. Like the replacements, Keanu Reeves talking about quicksand, that kind of
Yeah,
happened to Matt Corral in that game.
yeah.
LSU, I do not know what to expect from LSU. They've got all the talent in the world. They got two great defensive backs.
Hmm.
I don't know if they're going from a 3-4 to a 4-3 or to whatever they're going to play. I'm not really well versed on that, but I know they should have the athletes for it.
Right.
But the hire from Dave Aranda to Bo Pelini, that's
Oof.
two pretty close to opposites.
It is.
As far as a system goes. And if you try and go back, you're screwed. You lose a recruiting cycle. If you try to keep it a 4-3, you're still kind of a little bit screwed because it's going to be done a little bit different.
I know that's a very very good question. A very big question mark on the LSU side this year. Like you said, there's talent galore on that defense. Excuse me, Stingley may be the best corner, back in the nation. But what do you do? Do you stay at a 4-3 or do you go to the 3-4, which Bo Pelini's that's what he's used to. So I just that hire was kind of odd to me. I just didn't know what to think of it. But he's got talent, so we'll see what he does. But I don't think they're going to be as defensively as good as everybody thinks they're going to be.
I don't either. I think this could be a year that puts Ed O on the hot seat.
Yeah,
they're going to find out that 5-5 last year might not have been a fluke.
Yeah, they may be 6-6 this year.
Yeah, so it should be interesting. And looking at it, Texas A&M's defense, Mike Elko, I really like what they do. Ole Miss did not play them last year. I don't know what that defense will do against the Ole Miss offense. I know they play a lot of zone, so it's going to be interesting. But they finally are getting hog mollies down on the defensive line, and they can match up with teams there.
Absolutely, I think A&M is going to be very, very scary this year. Defensively, they got a quarterback situation that I'm not sure how that's going to play out yet. But they got a really good running back in Spiller. Defensively, they're stacked. So, I've always said there's going to be lane to beat Saban if there's going to be somebody. But Jimbo Fisher and Kirby Smart this year have the best chance to get Saban if they're ever going to get him. Because Jimbo's stacked and Kirby, if Alabama wins the West and meets, Georgia, if they win the East, it's another good chance for Kirby to get Saban.
Yeah, and up at Mississippi State, Zach Arnett, they did a underrated job last year with as bad as the offense was because everybody just played drop 8 against Mike Leach. Although that's changing a little bit. That system is kind of kicking in if you saw towards the end of the year last year. I look for them to be disruptive. It's that stuff from San Diego State that nobody paid attention to that they run on defense. But, I think Brule and those guys playing linebacker, I mean, they have a good physical defense, and they should be fairly fun to watch. Emmanuel Forbes is a great corner.
Absolutely. He's very underrated in this in the SEC. But you're right. I don't see them, they're going to play physical. Because it's an SEC defense. It just seems like, everybody on the SEC defense, it don't matter if you're Vandy, you're going to play hard. But they're probably going to be at the bottom this year. I just don't think they got the talent-wise around, on that defense to be, be in the hunt for great, stat games and stuff.
Yeah, it should be interesting to see. So we've gone over expansion tonight. We've gone over the SEC West defenses.
I forgot about Auburn.
Derek Mason. That's interesting. If Derek Mason's defense is like Vanderbilt's defense last year, he's going to have some trouble. But those guys are a man defense, and Derek Mason plays a lot of zone with what he's doing. So there could be a little bit of a personnel mismatch.
It could be. They've got talent down there to be disruptive if they put it all together. Mason is either going to have to implement his way to the guys, or he's going to have to go play man, which I'm sure Hartson is probably wanting to do. From what I've been seeing and what I have a brother-in-law who's an Auburn fan. I get most of my stuff from him, and he said that they kind of want to play man. So we'll see how it goes. But Mason was kind of an odd hire to me down there.
Yeah. So. But you've seen that, like the transfer portal, the big guy out of Kansas on the defensive line. He's obviously a two-gapper, run-stuffer guy. And you can see they're going to be a 3-4. They're going to play a lot of zone, but they're eventually going to get there because they're just not built to do it right now.
Right. I agree. And, it's I've seen some people saying that Auburn may have the third or fourth best defense in the conference this year. Man, that to me that's a little high, just for a new coach to me. They'd probably be fifth, I would think, but starting out, I think Mason's gonna have, like you said, some personnel issues, but once he gets it figured out, their talent and they could be a top 3 defense. But I think it's going to take a year or two.
Yeah. First thing people need to realize, I always tell this on the podcast and whatever show I'm on, is they rank them in the way they do it like there's one football player, but there's more than one football player.
Right.
That kid that is ranked 25th in 5 stars could be the 250th best person in the flex bone. You
Oh yeah.
know, yeah, and people need to keep that in mind whenever you do this. Whenever
Mhm.
Auburn, just because they have 4 stars over there, this might be a problem because of what they're asked to do.
Absolutely. So I don't really take in account early rankings, but I just thought it was interesting. But it's going to be interesting to see how some of these West defenses end up this year.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. I'm looking forward to it as it goes on. Like I said, Ole Miss is supposed to be greatly improved.
Yes.
Tyshim Johnson, interception spring game, has a
Mhm.
little bit of Honey Badger esque qualities about him.
Ooh.
True freshman. He should have had 2 picks in the spring game.
Oh
Uh,
man.
um, he has a chance to flash. They have an all conference get player coming from Navy that's going to be eligible this year. Otis Reese, another guy you didn't see. It's going to be a new look team than from what you saw when you came to Oxford last year.
Yeah, and it's they're going to play hard for Lane, and offensively they're going to be really tough because of his mastermind, offensive play skills and stuff. I'm going to tell you, I never laughed so hard as when I forgot who y'all was playing, but he threw that clipboard up in the air. It went like 100 feet in the air. I'm like, my gosh, that was so funny though. He's a class act, and he has definitely matured from the days of Tennessee.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, he
Hmm.
absolutely has. This is
Yeah.
a new guy. His time with Saban definitely helped him.
Hmm.
And even though he might troll Saban, you can tell there's a ton of respect there.
Absolutely. You can't help but, I mean, I know people hate Saban, but you can't help but respect him. I don't care how
Yeah.
much you hate him. You know.
Yeah. Okay, for Jake Thomas, I'm Steve
Hmm.
Willis. This has been Best of the West. Next week, Kevin Bohannon will be back,
Hmm.
and they can get maybe the Arkansas perspective on Texas, which I was looking for.
Yeah.
But we'll see you next week, and of course, hotty toddy.